It's really helpful.
Yeah. So what's been the big sorry, ADHD brain injury,
Brain fade. Love it. Love
brain
it.
fog, brain
Awesome.
fog.
Brain fog.
My life rewired. I was broken, now I'm whole. Wrote new chapters for my soul. Not the end, just re-inspired. This is me. My life
Well, it's a great
rewired.
day to have a great day. Welcome back to Life Rewired. You're going to enjoy the guest I have with me today. Her name is Sarah McCall. And if you want to talk to somebody who wrote the book on ADHD, this is the person. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
I'm
Thank you
doing
for having
fine.
me.
I'm doing fine. Remind me, you're from New Zealand?
That's right.
Okay. I thought I had that right. Now, we're about to get some snow showers here. What's the weather like where you're at? I'm curious.
Yesterday was 27 degrees centigrade,
Ooh.
which is high 80s, I believe, in Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay. Now we're sounding
Hmm.
better. We're sounding better now. I'm going, "Brr," and you're going.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Okay, we spoke about a week ago, and it was a great conversation. And one of the things that I wanted to bring you on for was because you wrote a nice book. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I've already forgotten the name of it. It's, here today, gone tomorrow. So tell me
Uh-huh.
the name of the book.
Cecil gets a haircut. Yeah. So Cecil is okay. So I used to be a heavy transport driver, and I would drive a truck on farm, spreading fertilizer. You know, interacting with sheep and rabbits and cows and deer and all sorts. And it occurred to me while I was driving that the one of the best ways of explaining the sort of emotional meltdown that my kids went through was could be likened to a lamb having its first haircut, so a first shear, if you like. And I
Hmm.
realized that the language that would go into that would be really helpful for parents like me who didn't have the skills or the tools or the techniques or the language to express or help the kids become articulate
Yeah.
in acknowledging their emotions. And when we acknowledge our emotions, then we can move on because we don't identify it's not that I am angry, it's I am experiencing anger.
Mhm.
So there's a slight shift there. And it
Yeah.
makes it more powerful when we can acknowledge and have language around our emotions.
Yeah.
It also really helps too with anxiety, ADHD, ASD. It really helps to be able to have the language around it. At the end of the book are some fantastic open-ended questions so that parents and grandparents and teachers and other important adults can open the world of a child
Yeah.
and say, so tell me what that looks like, or what does it feel like when, or what did you notice when, rather than how was your day.
Yeah.
It just seems to be just such a conversation stopper. Whereas when we get the privilege of walking alongside our kids, to be able to look at the world through their eyes and to see it from their perspective and then ask questions and be really curious, it's really helpful.
Yeah. So what's been the big sorry, ADHD brain injury,
Brain fade. Love it. Love
brain
it.
fog, brain
Awesome.
fog.
Brain fog.
How has the reception been? Have you been really getting some great feedback about the book?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's been amazing. Parents have said it's such a great tool to have to be able to connect with their kids and be able to speak in such a way that shows the kids that they have their backs and that it's not us and them, parents do as you're told, which is the
Yeah.
environment that I was brought up in, and
Hmm.
no disrespect to my parents. Please don't hear that. They're amazing people. They did the best they could with the tools that they had. And so it's simply about looking to help others to maybe get a handle on some of these emotions that we're not all that comfortable with, because emotions should be shunned. And even within the church, people will find that, oh, you should just pray harder, you should just submit more, you
Yeah.
should be this, you should be that. And it doesn't matter whether it's a church environment or if it's on the rugby pad. Oh, suck it up, mate. What's wrong with
Right.
you? you know but it's really unhelpful. If someone's
Yeah.
been brave enough to be able to express that they've got this emotion going on, we don't need to fix it. It's not our problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's their problem. And the fact that you're their safe person, they choose to share that with you, what an incredible privilege. And how we
Right.
handle that is really important. And
Mm-hmm.
so having the language, and this is the beauty of this book, is that it's a super fast read. But at the end of it are questions that you can use in the workroom or,
Mm-hmm.
across the yard and yes, I did use them on occasion. Use them out at the wash when you're washing out a sheep truck, or use them when
Yeah.
you're cleaning down your bulky, or use them in the supermarket line. How are you doing today? Or even naming an emotion. Something I learned from Chris Voss, an incredible ex-FBI negotiator, was to even label an emotion. And even if it's wrong, it doesn't matter.
I've heard
You look
that.
stressed today. No, I'm not feeling stressed. I'm just really, I don't know, itchy. Wow, that sounds awful. Tell me more. I'm
Yeah.
listening. I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows the person, when you dig into that, when you allow them the privilege of exploring the fullness of their emotion, they actually move through it super fast. Maybe a bit slow for the first few times, but in spite of what we think, and in spite of, social mores that say, don't let people wallow in their emotions. Actually, we move through them faster because we explore them, because we can label them and recognize that that's an emotion. It is fleeting and it's passing, rather than being denied the privilege of exploring it and
Right.
then ruminating over it. There must be something wrong with me. I must be broken. This is shameful. I shouldn't feel this way. And we don't stuff things down. And so we don't end up with other symptoms that come along later, which is maybe physical emotions of gut upsets and headaches and stress and tension and anger. And, so it's really, really helpful. Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, we all just want to be validated.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that if we can, I've been on a journey looking to other people to validate me. And now I'm recognizing that actually I'm my biggest champion. I need to validate what I'm feeling. I
I
need
love
to
that.
do that for me. And now that I have the skills, I can, whereas before I didn't.
Uh,
Now I do.
we do tend to
So
be our worst critic, though. So it's commendable that you're recognizing that in yourself. We
it's
all
been a
should take
journey.
yeah, we all should take cue to what you're doing. We really
Thank
should.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was writing another tool this morning to go out with an email I'm writing, and it's like, well, actually, on this side of the fence, you've got, maybe an ADHD brain or an emotional brain or whatever it is
Uh-huh.
that's on this side of the fence. But on the other side of the fence is actually a really important conversation to have too. And so it's about bringing balance to that and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that, this person's at capacity. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to make a decision about dinner. And it's the same with a
Yes.
head injury or
Mm-hmm.
ADHD or emotional or trauma or grief or anything else. If a person's at capacity, we need to honor that and
Yeah.
recognize, okay, these are our go-to things. We know they like chicken soup. We know that they like their hoodie because they feel safe and comfortable in it. And we know that, there's I don't know, something that they can hang on to because it helps keep them grounded in the moment rather than disappearing off into the emotional ether, which isn't really very helpful.
I love that chicken soup analogy. That was pretty cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. So when we were talking a few weeks ago, we were talking about breaking that stigma that comes
Mm-hmm.
with ADHD because everyone's like, oh, everybody's got ADHD now. Well, most people do and
Wow.
don't realize it. I'm sure you probably
That
get
is,
that in New Zealand, just like we do in the States.
yeah, it is probably one of the most invalidating, dismissive statements that
Hmm.
anybody can say to anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody's a little bit ADHD right now.
Right.
Excuse me, is everybody a little bit cancer right now? Is everybody a little bit traumatic right now? Is everybody a little bit, they may be a little bit traumatized.
Yeah.
But don't you dare diminish what the other person's going through. Don't you dare diminish what the other person's going through.
Exactly. I
Don't you
hear that
dare.
all the time here. Do you hear that a lot in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah. Oh, everybody's a little bit ADHD right now.
Yeah.
You may experience a fleeting passing moment where you walk into the kitchen and can't remember what you do, why you're there. And you may laugh it off. But for a person like me who has the chronic crippling effects of ADHD every single moment of every single day, and sometimes doesn't have the capacity to laugh, that's ADHD.
Yes.
When you stand up and you forget why you stood up, when you turn around and you are completely disoriented and lost in your own home, it's terrifying. You know, that's happened on a couple of occasions to me, and it's awful, utterly awful. When you are driving down the road and you don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it or where you're even going, or you get to the supermarket and you do need food, but the noise of the people in there, the smell of the people, the smell of the food, the lights that are so harsh overhead, you can't even go in because there are so many sensory overload things happening that you just can't. Now tell me you've got ADHD.
Right. It can be crippling, especially when you have all those sensory things going on. The brightness of the lights, for example.
And I don't think it's any different for somebody with head trauma either.
No.
It's certainly not been in my experience anyway with my mum and my husband. You know, lights are too noisy, too bright sometimes, and sound is too loud sometimes, and even the feeling of clothing is just awful sometimes, and maybe a textural food that you've thoroughly enjoyed, now you can't even handle that thing in your mouth, you know, and you struggle to clean your teeth because the feeling of the toothbrush is like using a yard brush in your mouth instead of using a toothbrush. I mean, this is a reality of ADHD and autism. You know, there is an overlap in them.
Yeah, especially with autism. I mean, I know a few people that have autism, and they're very high functioning people, but I get what they're going through with like the clothing and stuff like that, and some people will have to wear shorts year round or pants year round. And it's from the outside, you look at it, you're thinking, well, that's just crazy, but it's not crazy until you've been through it. You don't know what it feels like.
No, and you can't ever get out of it. This is the thing, you know, somebody who says, oh, we're, you know, everybody's a little bit ADHD.
Right.
Is that they don't actually deal with it all the time. They can get out of it. You know, they can switch off. I can't.
The number of times
really
I've heard people say, oh, I lose my keys all the time. Really?
Right. And how many times do you have to have the locksmith to your place? And how many times do you have to, you know, one of the safety things that we've got is a lockbox outside our home. And the code to the lockbox is something that usually I can remember, but not always.
Right.
But it gives me that safety net because I'm not focusing on don't lose. That's the thing. Don't lose. You're focusing on losing. Remember your keys is a totally different conversation. And it's a tweak. It's a tiny little tweak, you know? Remember your keys. Oh, yeah, I can remember my keys. Don't forget. What am I not forgetting?
Yep.
What? I know I've forgotten something. What am I supposed to remember? You know?
I totally relate to that. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's so relatable.
You're laughing with. Yeah.
I'm laughing because it's so relatable. And for me, this morning when I got out of bed, it took me 5 minutes to get my pants on. I struggled to figure out how to dress this morning.
Right.
And how do you compare forgetting your keys to how do I put my pants on?
Or even what order do you put the clothing on in?
Yeah.
When I take my clothes off at night, I take it off in order and lay them out on the chair and then when I change out the dirty clothes, I make sure that they're in the order that they're going back on my body, because otherwise I'm stuffed. I'm so lost.
Have you
You
ever
just sort of
gotten
look at me and
into the
think,
shower with your clothes on?
you might think that. I couldn't possibly comment. Or you watch, or you're
Yeah.
standing there in the shower wondering why there's no water.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you said that, because I've done that. My wife's come into the bathroom and she knows I'm in the tub, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know what to do next." You know, the people from the outside, they're going like, "Ha ha ha," but they don't get it. They don't
Yeah,
understand that the paths aren't connecting in the brain.
it's so disorienting.
Yeah, it is. It's
And it
scary.
and and it's exactly, it is frightening, because you know what to do, but you can't make the trip.
Yes, exactly. You nailed it. You nailed it. How do you break the stigma? How are you breaking the stigma?
Some may call me confrontational. If somebody says to me, everybody's a little ADHD now, um, I'm getting better at reading the room. And I might simply make a drop comment like, really, how does that affect you in your everyday life?
Mm, that's a good comeback. It really is.
Other people will say something like that, and my husband will look at my face and he'll go, "Oh, wrong question, wrong lady, wrong day, wrong time." And I might just sit there and say nothing at all. And other times I'll say, yeah. And I'll bet the people who are getting diagnosed have struggled with it their whole life, and now they finally make sense.
Mm,
And I'm not dismissing the other person's statement. I'm simply bringing a different perspective to it in a
mhm.
way that is honoring rather than critical. And so some people don't like it because they do feel it's confrontational, because they want to be able to get away with a comment that they haven't really thought through the impact and effect of it on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
They have a strong viewpoint about something. I
Mm,
remember one time I was working in a very low socioeconomic area, and one of these, by most people's standards, fairly well-to-do kind of person. I mean, they didn't have a surplus. They weren't living in a mansion. They weren't, driving a Mercedes or an Audi or anything. They had a vehicle each, husband and wife. They'd been married all their life. Their idea of normal was husband and wife, car each, small home, live within your means, take ownership. The person that he was criticizing, he said, "Oh, they should just eat beans if they're hungry." And I
okay.
thought, mate,
Nice
wow,
comment. Wow.
wow. If they're hungry, they'll eat beans, or something along those lines. And I thought, mate, if you've been eating beans every single day of your life and you're struggling with a textural problem,
Yeah.
that even if those beans are pureed and smoothied, you may not have the power for it. You may not
Hmm.
have, um, you may not actually have the capacity to handle that food in your mouth without vomiting, because it actually
Yeah.
makes you feel that ill. You may not be able to even handle the smell of those beans.
Hmm.
But on top of that, even aside from a diagnosis, rude, disrespectful, dishonoring of another human being who
Yeah.
deserves the most basic humanity. Like, why can't they eat something different?
Exactly.
What gives you the right to look down on them because they've never had the experience of what it's like to grow up in in a husband, with a two-parent household?
Hmm.
And please don't hear me dismissing anybody who chooses to live any different way. I'm not. I'm saying anybody who lives in a way that is different to yours, you don't have any right to judge them.
Right. Exactly. Most people will live the way that that's comfortable for them. And what's right for me may not be right for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, this was the cool thing about the job that I did, was that I was hearing the same complaint, week in, week out
Mm-hmm.
from the group that I was working with, the group of people that I was working with. And one day something inside of me just snapped. And I said, right, upstairs, we're going to make a loaf of bread. And they looked at me as if to say, what? You can make bread? No, we buy bread. No, we're going to go and make a loaf of bread. And so in the making of that loaf of bread, they were listened to. They made the best loaf of bread of their entire life because they were so stressed. They were kneading that bread for a good 20, 25 minutes or more. So
Yeah.
it was the most beautiful loaf of bread, because of their experience, because of pushing all of that, stress into the bread. And I was saying, just, when you feel this, just like push that bread away from you. Now fold it back and push it away again. And so we had a very visceral way for them to disperse the stress. And blow me down, within 6 months' time, the drugs that person was choosing to take to deal with their stress, okay, there's a difference. Yes, they were addicted, but they were addicted because they were trying to get out of their pain.
Right.
They were trying to make their pain stop. And
Mm-hmm.
so I gave them a different way of dealing with their pain. And so because they had a different way to deal with their pain, now they didn't need the drugs. They still had to wean off them. There was still a process. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I'm saying that within 6 months, the dependence on the drugs that they were depending on was now far less. Within 18 months, they were completely drug-free.
That's amazing.
And it's all on them. I mean, sure, I took them to make a loaf of bread, but with that loaf of bread, now they've got a way to deal with their stress. They've got a way to then be able to provide for their children, knowing that it's a nutrient-dense form of food rather than the airy, fluffy stuff you get at the supermarket. Cost about the same.
Yeah.
But the benefit of doing it was extraordinary, because when this person started, they shared it with that person. That person got interested, come and show me how to do this. Then we started a cooking class, and then we started working as a community. So together, when they were getting the boxes of food from the supermarket, that, these beautiful focaccia and brioche and all this sort of thing, I showed them how to make it. And now they were eating like rich people. In their minds, they were eating like rich people. And as a community, we went to the supermarket. This person bought 25 cents. This person had saved up $1. This person had done this. And then we pulled all of those resources. And this week we bought rock salt, or we bought olive oil, or whatever it was that we bought. It didn't matter. It was a little bit. And now they were living as the other half lived. And so their self-worth grew. And so their sense of self grew.
Yeah.
And because they weren't yelling at their kids because they were making their loaves of bread, the relationships, and I said, well, maybe if you're stressed out, maybe you could make a loaf of bread and listen while they're telling you.
Hey, that's an awesome
I'm not
idea.
telling them what to do, but hey, and now because they're kneading the bread and working the frustration out in the bread, they're listening to their kids. They're using the open-ended questions. They're becoming more independent. They're creating flexibility within their budget. They're creating something that they are enjoying doing. They're doing it as a community event. Now they've got better relationships, and they're starting to learn how to work with one another, even though they're in this toxic environment. Yeah. Even though they still haven't changed much of their outward circumstances, inwardly, where it matters most, because they're the person that you're with 24/7. Yeah. Inwardly, they were feeling so much better.
Right.
And now this woman, this first woman has proudly, for the last 5 years, been working in a bar without drugs, without alcohol, holding down a job. She is the first person in 4 generations to do so.
Wow.
And even her son, who has gone to jail, is learning that he needs to take responsibility for his action. Is he owning what he has done? He's getting the counseling he needs. And it all came from making a loaf of bread because his mum has shown him that he needs to take ownership. She
Isn't that
did the work. She
that's
did the
amazing?
work. Just, it's wild
Yeah,
when you
all from a
give
loaf of bread.
all from a loaf of bread. How crazy is that? It's just, it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
There's a message in
That
there somewhere.
incredible resilience.
Yeah,
It's the whole teach a man to fish and they'll feed their family. Give a man a fish and they'll feed their family for a day.
so true. So true.
But that woman has shown that man who was very judgmental that actually it's not about the beans at all. It's
Yeah.
about courage and empathy. It's about compassion and humanity. And it's about getting in the trenches and meeting people where they're at
Mm-hmm.
and then working with them by labeling emotions and giving a physical outlet for very strong emotions,
Yeah.
in a safe way that actually builds them up. It was extraordinary.
Yeah. And think of that tool that you gave that person. They are probably going to be using that, and it's just going to keep snowballing and snowballing.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I still have students that I taught to make bread, and they were in a totally different situation. I taught students. I did a cooking class at the local church. I taught people how to make bread, and they're like, "Oh, we're poor students." I said, "Like rubbish, you're poor students. You just don't know how to budget. You don't know
Mhm.
what you actually have, and so let me show you. This is what I can show you." I still have, I don't know, over a dozen of them. Oh, I was making bread the other day and I was thinking of you. It's like, that's from over 20 years ago. And this, it's really neat to hear that the skill that you teach somebody is having an impact, not just on my family, but also on other families and how they're then going and teaching other people. There's actually a lady we're going to go and have dinner with tonight. And she said to me, "I'm making butter chicken the way that you taught me to do it." And I laugh at this because it's just wonderful that people can take the skill that you teach and steward it well and grow it.
Yeah.
And now instead of filling themselves with ready-made and pre-made and so on, they can do it themselves from wholesome ingredients that cost them less than the cost of the jar in the first place in the supermarket. It's extraordinary.
It is. It is.
How did we even get onto this topic? This is such a segue.
Sounds like we had an ADHD moment, but that's okay.
Classic
That is
squirrel.
what the program's about, so we're going to allow it. I want to know how
Excellent.
people can support your mission. How can people support you to help you to be able to keep going and keep spreading the word and breaking the stigma?
Well, you could. I think the question you're asking is how to connect on social media or website. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or are you asking more in terms of how do we have conversations with people?
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is, what needs do you have that needs to be met? Like, can people share about your story, about your book, about anything like that? Do you need financial assistance? Do you need people to just say, "Hey, we're available through Zoom. We can, if you want to teach our schools or universities about ADHD, what do you require?"
First, thank you for asking. Second, thank you for clarifying. And third, my gosh, what a privilege to be able to help other people with ADHD. What a privilege to be able to teach in schools. What a privilege to be here in New Zealand and talk to people in America about emotional intelligence, about ADHD, about anything like that. So, I mean, if there's any way at all that Absolutely. Join me on the scatterbrainshepherd.com. That's my website. Hook into some of the resources there that will help you with your relationships, with families, with friends, with colleagues. If there's any way that I can serve to connect, with your work environment or your home environment or your school environment, that would just be so cool to be able to share the story of Cecil. And actually, give me 1 second. I'll grab the book. Here it is. Oh, it's backwards. But this is the book. Anyway, Cecil Gets a Haircut. And that's me on the back.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
How do they get the book?
They can get that on Amazon. Cecil Gets a Haircut. They can get that on Amazon and drop shipped, which is amazing. But yes, the scatterbrainshepherd.com is where I work specifically in the ADHD realm. Facebook is the same. Insta is the same. Any of those sorts of things. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Well, we have just a few seconds left of the program. I want to make sure I give you the chance to say whatever it is that you need to say to encourage people.
Oh. Be curious, be kind. Because everybody's carrying an invisible load that we know nothing about. It might be past trauma, it might be an injury, it might be grief, it might be ADHD, it might be ASD, it might be anything. We only see from one side of the fence. Mm-hmm. There's another 360 degrees perspectives, and then minutes and seconds, and however that works out, I don't know. But be kind. If somebody has an overreaction, it's like, oh, okay, steps in a minefield there. Maybe sometimes asking somebody what they need when they're clearly stressed is not helpful. Maybe if you give them would you like a hug or do you want quiet?
Yeah.
Can I bring you a meal? Can we go for a walk together? Can we have coffee together? But just one question, an either or. Would you like a hug or do you want to be left alone? Is the best thing. I'm currently writing another resource at the moment, which is like a both sides of the fence thing. So for me, if I'm at capacity with my husband, who's not particularly well at the moment, he is also more likely to be at capacity most of the time as well. Mm-hmm. So we need something that can communicate that I'm at capacity and that I can't do questions. Yeah. So if that's helpful, when it's ready, I'll send that through to you. And if anybody's asking for it, it'd be a privilege to be able to share that with you too.
Oh yeah.
But
please
mostly be kind and be curious. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That says a lot with very little. It really does. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Sarah. I will link your website below. Please make sure you check it out and go on Amazon and order her book. I'll get that link below it as well. So just make sure you're reading the comments below. If you have need of resources, if you have a nearly brain injury, go to our website, myliferewired.com. On there, you'll find a tab called resources. Everything that I find that's beneficial, you can find it right there. So until next week, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you guys next week.
This is me, my life rewired.